Okay, the recording started.
Should we keep our cameras on or should we turn them off?
We should keep them on, but we should have
Okay,
our
guys, we'll
microphones
go.
out. Okay, all right. Cheryl, should we give it a few minutes until, or do we have a green signal to start?
Okay, I think we should start.
Okay.
Okay. Hello, everyone. To all the students and all the staff joining us, we welcome you to this session of the leadership workshop series. Today, me and my colleagues Mashal, and Mariam will be talking about multicultural awareness in the university setting and beyond. So basically, this is our basic info. I'm Shahroz Ahmed. My designation is career advisor. I work at Beaconhouse College Campus North in Karachi. And with me will be Mashal and Mariam today. And these are our emails. So throughout the session, if you have any questions, you may email us in real time. And at the end of the session, we will try to take as many questions as we can. So we'll move along now. So this presentation is basically going to introduce you to a skill that is very valued in professional and personal life these days. It's called cultural competency. So we will start by discussing what cultural competency is and why it is important. We will also touch upon issues of cultural sensitivity and what it means to be culturally sensitive to other people and how to cope when other people are being culturally insensitive to you. And when we move on from that, we will discuss cultural norms of the popular BSS destinations, places where our students like to go. And we will also be playing short videos of some university students locally and abroad for them to tell you about their experiences in a multicultural context. So let's begin. So we've all been to a bazaar, and at some point or the other, whether it's just to accompany somebody or whether it's to buy something ourselves. And more often than not, when we are sitting in front of a vendor, we are looking at cloth, for example. The vendor would show us something, and we would be talking about it amongst ourselves, you and your family, for example. And you might be speaking a language that the vendor might not be speaking. For example, your vendor might be speaking Urdu, but you might be from a Sindhi family, so you might be speaking Sindhi in front of them to discuss the cloth that he's showing you. The vendor might pick up on it, and more often than not, this does happen. The vendor picks up on the language that you're speaking and would speak certain words from that language and maybe address you in certain words of affection from that language, stuff like that. Now, and what that does is that it allows the vendor to build a sort of a rapport with you, and it sort of brings you on friendlier ground, and it helps him make a sale much easier than it would have been if that connection wasn't there. The skill that this vendor has exhibited in this moment is a skill called cultural competence. It's the ability to recognize difference and to act accordingly, in accordance with that difference. So we will watch a short video on cultural competence, and then we will move the conversation forward.
When I think of the term cultural competency, I think of being aware of not only my culture, but having awareness of other cultures as well.
Cultural competency to me is about acknowledging and honoring differences, not only in a coworker or patient's culture, but more importantly, in one's own culture.
To me, cultural competency means to have the ability to recognize and be aware of people's differences, and in spite of those differences, be accepting and respectful to all.
Working in an environment where I can respect the beliefs, traditions, and customs of others.
Being culturally competent is acknowledging and understanding that people may be different but should be treated with equality and respect. Culture is who we are. We should embrace it with pride and dignity.
Okay, so as the video basically showed you towards the end, cultural competency means an individual or an organization's ability to interact with people from different cultures. Now, as we know, we just need to take one look around ourselves in our classrooms, in our homes, in our neighborhoods to realize that we are different in many ways, right? So we can be different in terms of our class, we can be different in terms of our race or ethnicity, we can be different in terms of our gender or our ability or our religion. Now, most of us are born into these differences, which means they're inevitable. You can't escape these differences. If you are born into a gender, you're born into a gender. That's a difference that is established, right? Now, being different is very natural, but the problem arises in a multicultural setting when you start treating people differently, right? Treating people is not natural. Treating people different is not natural, and so much so that there are different terms for when you treat people differently according to certain characteristics. So if you are treating people differently based on their class or their socioeconomic status, it's called classism. If you're treating people differently based on their sex or gender, you're engaging in sexism. And along those lines, there's racism, there's ableism, and there's religious intolerance. These are all issues that we generally do see around ourselves when we grow up on some level or the other. And they can exist on three different levels. So you can treat people differently on the basis of these factors. You can engage in these acts on three levels. So one is thoughts, the other is words, and then obviously the most serious one, which is actions, right? So on the level of thoughts, basically what happens is, okay, you might hold stereotypical beliefs about someone based on their race, ethnicity, their gender, or their class or disability. Someone who is coming from this group, this is what it looks like. Someone who belongs to a certain ethnic group is likely to engage in this sort of behavior. We all hold beliefs like that. It's very natural the way we look at it. But it's problematic because it leads to bigger things that might be a little more problematic. So for example, words. You might, based on your beliefs, you might start making jokes about people based on stereotypes of their gender, of their race, of their ethnicity, or of their disability, for example. You might call someone blind as a joke, but to an actual person who is blind, that would be an insult, right? And then there's actions. When you, based on your beliefs and your words, you actively start denying people opportunities based on their race, ethnicity, gender, class, or ability. So you might, for example, an organization might put out a job application which says people with certain disabilities cannot apply. That would be discriminatory based on their ability. And that is problematic behavior. So this is what happens when we do not engage in cultural competency. This is what the absence of cultural competency and insensitivity looks like. But then what is the alternative? Again, like I said, we all grow up with beliefs like this, with these tendencies to treat people differently based on different factors, right? Now, this leads to something that is called privilege, right? Now, what you need to understand as students, as staff, as people who are going to be going into university and then later professional life, that everyone's experiences based on their identity are different. Someone from a certain race has different experience of a very similar thing that you might have. For example, when you're looking at something like public transport, for example, catching a bus on the road, to an able-bodied person like myself, for example, catching a bus would not be that big an issue. To someone who has a disability, catching the bus would be nearly impossible because the buses are not made accessible to people with disabilities, right? To someone in the US, for example, you see a lot of discussion on race, for example. So that is basically a conversation about privilege. Now, those who lack this privilege have to work harder for opportunities that are available to those who have more privilege. And this is something that we all need to recognize. This is where the alternative starts. And how do you arrive to this alternative? Basically, you engage in empathy and sensitivity. These two are the main points of the skill that is called cultural competence. So you need to approach issues of difference, people who are different than you need to approach them with empathy and sensitivity rather than judgment. Now, to go into this in a little more detail, I will pass the mic on to my colleague Mashal, and then we'll come back to this in the end.
Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody, and good evening. My name is Mashal. I work as the student counselor for Beaconhouse College Campus Defense. Sheroz, if you could please move ahead. Yes. Okay. Now, so today I'm going to be discussing about some of the coping strategies about how our students in a multicultural setting, not just going to universities abroad, but also going to universities locally, can utilize in order to help them, identify better in a multicultural setting. Now, to begin with, I want us all to think back to a time where we were made to feel uncomfortable because of who we were or where we came from, and how did it make us feel. I'm going to give all of us, including myself, just a minute just to think about it, just to remember the feeling of how we felt at that time. Okay, so, looking back, I'm sure we've all been through that, and we've all had somewhat of an experience in that way. Now, I want us to hold on to that feeling. We did a survey with our students, on how prevalent is discrimination, and is it really a big deal? Basically, what we're talking about here, how much of a difference does it make, and is it actually there? So have you ever been in a group situation? Have you ever been in a group situation where a mistake you made was attributed to your gender, socioeconomic status, ethnic group, religion? 55% of us said yes to that, which is a very large number, more than half of us. And I think it's a pretty obvious answer, which is why we're here today talking about this. Have you ever been bullied or made fun of based on your ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, religion? More than half of us, again, said yes to that. And again, a very obvious number. Have you ever been in a group situation where someone made a joke about your ethnicity, socioeconomic status, gender, religion, which made you uncomfortable? 60% of us said, 60% is a very large number. That's more than half of us who said yes to this. So basically, we conducted this survey with our students before this session, just to get an idea of what we're looking at here. And basically, the reason we're having this session is, basically, these are just some statistics to show you that, it is a very prevailing topic. And if yes, did you feel safe expressing your discomfort if you've been in such a situation? Now, if I think back, or if any of us think back to that time, we realize that it's not, if you're in a situation in which you're uncomfortable, it's not always easy to express that. So only, I would say 56% of us managed to, express that discomfort. And, only about 31% of us managed to, express, which is a very obvious number again. And 56% of us said no, because it's not easy to express yourself, especially if you're in that situation. So what can we do, or what can we change? Because we cannot change anybody in front of us, right? So what can we change in ourselves so that we don't make others uncomfortable, and hence we won't feel uncomfortable? Now, remember that feeling I asked all of us to hold back on, about discomfort that we felt when we were in such a situation? Now, what the difference could have been is that whoever made us feel that way, and if we made others feel that way, as my colleague said earlier, that this is something that we all slip into doing, especially if it's normal in a culture. We manage to do it to other people. It's a slip of a tongue sometimes, and we don't think of it as a big deal, but it actually, what it's making someone else feel like can be a big deal. And now the difference between that is empathy. What is empathy? Now, empathy is basically, in a very basic definition, empathy is just the ability to understand the feelings of somebody else, or putting yourself in the other person's shoes. That is essentially what empathy is. Now, why that's so important in a multicultural setting is something that we're going to be talking about in a while. And let's just get a better understanding of what empathy is through this video.
Empathy. EMPATHY. EMPITH. Oh, why?
I have no idea how you spell that.
Empathy is like what you feel, like how you feel about somebody.
For me, the word empathy means
and you put yourself in somebody else's shoes.
Like if a person's having a problem, you can help them because you know how they're feeling.
My friend, she was having some conflicts, and I was trying to see her point of view. Like maybe I have gone through it, or I know how it feels, or not. I just try to get into their shoes the best way I can.
I knew someone that they used to tell her that she was like a tomboy. Almost nobody was her friend. If I was in her shoe, I would have felt the same as her. I would have been sad. So then I started being her friend. I started eating lunch with her and playing around.
My friend's brother died. My friend Angel and I, what we did was that we made a banner and we made everyone in the class sign it. It made me proud because I know that I could like help someone feel better.
It's important to have somebody to look out for you.
When I first came to this country, I didn't know no English, I knew only Spanish. These girls, they sat next to me and then they started being my friends.
I could tell how someone's feeling because
in their faces, like I could see if they're sad or mad.
I mostly look at their eyes.
I already know when they're shy and nervous. They just sit in a corner and don't play with nobody or speak.
If somebody's struggling with something, you want them to keep on moving forward. You don't want them to stay in the same place.
I will sit next to him and say, why are you sad? And if they say yes, I will help him out and make him feel happy.
If everybody can understand everybody else's feelings, everybody will be friends. Everybody in the school will be friends.
Empathy, E-M-P-A-T-H-Y.
E-M-P-A-T-H-Y.
Oh, E-M-P-A-T-H-Y. There you go.
Okay, great. I think by now all of us know what empathy is, including the spelling. So basically, the reason I chose this video and the reason I like it so much is that even though it's, what we would assume a very basic concept, it's not, let's be honest, it's not present and not just everybody else, but sometimes even we lack it. I mean, we're all human, right? We all lack it somewhere or another. And I wouldn't just call this a trait. I mean, I wouldn't just call this a skill or a trait. In my opinion, it's both, because I feel like it can be acquired. And the difference between coming back to that uncomfortable feeling, the difference was empathy. Now, if someone was empathetic, or if we were empathetic towards somebody else, we would realize that what we're saying to that other person would reflect in our communication, which is very important in a multicultural setting. And therefore, it would reflect in that we would not make the other person uncomfortable, whether that's about their religion, whether that's about their socioeconomic status, whether that's even about their nationality, their body, their physical appearance, anything. We would be careful in what we're saying to the other person, right? We would be careful if we have empathy in us, we would be careful about what we're saying. It would reflect in our communication. We would be sensitive to other people's beliefs, practices, their existence. So for example, if someone is from a different nationality, or if someone is from a different religion, or if somebody is from a different socioeconomic background, we would not say something to mock them. We would not say something to make them uncomfortable, because let's be honest, we've all been in that situation, right? And the best way to acknowledge each other's differences is by celebrating each other's differences. Now, the best way to do that is, for example, if you have somebody in your class and they have not had the same experiences as you, or they have not had the same opportunities as you, you can help them out. If they're having trouble getting to university on time because they might be taking public transport, or, they might be, help them out. Offer to pick them up, offer to bring them, offer to bring them with you, because maybe they've not had the same privileges, and vice versa. Because if you start doing it, people will do it for you as well. Similarly, if you have someone in your class who's, from a different religion, on their religious holiday, celebrate it with them, acknowledge it, wish them. And hence, Therefore, they're going to start doing that back to you. Invite them over on your religious holiday. The best way to acknowledge each other's differences is by celebrating each other's differences. Now, what that does is that helps you form meaningful relationships by celebrating those differences. Now, I have grown up in a very multicultural background myself, and what I've learned is the best, once you break that ice, once you start celebrating each other's differences, and once you have that sort of connection, you form relationships which are for lifetime. And always remember that once you have exposure to different cultures, you will always have more confidence, because you're going to recognize how other people's mindsets work. You're going to realize how other people's, basically their do's and don'ts, which my colleague will be discussing better ahead, but you're going to get a general sense of how it's like, and to be in someone else's shoes, hence empathy. Now, some of the other factors which, our students cannot just utilize when they're going to universities abroad, like I mentioned earlier, but also local universities. So language, and this would obviously be more for universities abroad. Just pick up a language course in advance, just make sure that you have the basic do's and don'ts of the language that, is spoken over there. And that's really going to help you get by in like general, everyday, everyday sort of interactions and things like that. And that's going to help you adjust better in a multicultural setting. Finances, I think we really need to also normalize our students working here at a student level as well. I mean, we have so much variety of jobs now, whether that's online or whether that's anywhere else. And remember, the earlier you work, the earlier you're going to have experience, and the earlier you're going to learn how to adjust in different cultures. Because not all schools and not all universities, it's a different life. Once you step into the professional life, where we constantly have this sort of, everything being given to us sort of a thing, that is not how it is in the professional life. So the earlier you learn that, the earlier it's going to be, earlier it's going to help you adjust in different settings. And of course, having savings from a very early age is always going to be beneficial as well. Now, dress code, wherever you're going, whatever university you're going, whatever your country you're going, make sure you have a general sense of what the dress code is over there. Now, it's, your dressing has a huge part of your personality and how you are as a person. It's going to help you adjust better. If there's something that's not appreciated in a culture, or I know that the weather is not a certain way, it's only going to make you comfortable in that setting, right? So I would also suggest, a heads up on the dress code. One more factor that I would like to, bring across is food. I think let's just all be honest that food is something that it's a basic life skill, and irrespective of the gender, I feel like we should all have a general sense of how to cook. And it's not just, like I mentioned earlier, it's not about just surviving abroad. It's over here as well. We really need to learn to make ourselves a meal when we're hungry, and irrespective of gender, food is something, I feel like it's a basic life skill, and we should learn how to do that before we get into a background as such, of course. Okay, and always remember who you are. Now, your gender, your socioeconomic status, your background, your nationality, none of that is going to determine what your goal is, right? So if you are in that university or if you are in that setting, your ultimate goal should not be compromised. Remember, success stories are never made on people who, let their circumstances get to them, or let people make them feel like, their circumstances are going to define them. Always remember who you are, because who you are is, what makes you. Your background and all of that is unique to you. So don't let anybody else make you feel otherwise. And that should never, never, ever come in the middle of the goal and why you're actually there. And I really like this quote because it says, always remember who you are. Know that you are never required to apologize to anyone for being yourself. So always remember that wherever you go, whatever setting you're in, who you are makes you unique. Okay, now if, let's say, if we're in a setting and we're not being, it's a little difficult to adjust, and that's very natural, right? So it's very important to have a healthy support system for good well-being. So whether that's friends, whether that's family, calling your family back home, or even if you're in a setting where, you don't have your friends over there, make sure you hold on to those people. Even if it's just a couple of people, or even if it's one person, let it out. Talk therapy is the best therapy. Let it out. Tell them how you're feeling so that they can help you. A lot of times there's so many things which are going on in our minds and it doesn't make sense to us. But once we let it out, it's always going to be beneficial for us because it helps us, the people who are close to us and the people who understand us, give us a better understanding of what's going on with us sometimes. And if still you feel like, again, healthy coping as well, always make sure to do things such as exercise or do things which help you de-stress. And that can be anything, whether it's cooking, painting, anything. But make sure to keep those a part of your daily lives no matter what. And if you still feel like, okay, I have not been feeling myself and the things which used to help me earlier are not really working anymore, remember, do not hesitate to seek professional help. It's okay. It's okay to go to somebody. It's okay to get professional help if things seem overwhelming. And I would just say all the best to all the students who are watching this. And I wish you all the luck for wherever you're going. And I'm going to be passing it on to Mariam now, who's going to be going ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Hello, everyone. My name is Mariam Naeem Khan, and I am the CAS coordinator as well as the career advisor for Beaconhouse PCHS campus. I look after IBDP. Now, by this time, I'm pretty sure you all must have gotten your offer letters and you would have planned to go to different countries. Taking the conversation forward, I would like to give you some tips and tricks of how you should conduct yourself when you go into a foreign country. The very first thing that you need to do before you move on to your foreign country, your country where you would like to study, is do research on the local social and cultural norms of the place that you're going to visit. It's very important that you familiarize yourself with, how do the people in that country conduct themselves when it comes to dressing, when it comes to addressing other people, when it comes to handshakes. You see, your dressing plays a very vital role, and every country has a set dress code. What is acceptable in your country may or might not be acceptable in some other country. Say, for example, in US, it's all right to dress smart casually, but in UK, Germany, Ireland, Russia, Denmark, it's very important that you dress up very formally for your first meeting at least. And then, later on, you might just want to switch to a casual dress code. But in your first meetings, you should be, dressed up nicely, whether it is smart, casual, or it is formal. Just be very aware of how the dressing in that country goes. Similarly, when it comes to addressing people, you need to be familiar of how to people in your foreign country address. Say, for example, in US, it's all right to use first names, Smith, John, Mr. Smith, Mr. John. But in UK, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, you need to be very formal. You need to add Mr. in front for sure. I mean, in US, you could just say John, but in UK, you have to say Mr. John. Be very nice and formal. Especially when it comes to the conversation, you need to know how to break the ice and get the conversation going. Like in Pakistan, we're very used to saying Assalamu alaikum and then launching into the conversation. But in countries like Germany, you might want to be a little, you might want to be just very brief and talk to the point. Don't just beat about the bush too much. Whereas in UK, if you're going to UK, you will have to, beat about the bush a bit, talk about the weather, talk about your health, talk about plants, say, for example, and then come to the point. You see, you need to be very observant of how people in that country carry themselves. Which brings me to my second point is that once you land in the country, start observing. Actually, I would say once you start your journey from Pakistan only, start observing, how people are carrying themselves. You need to be very familiar with the concept of personal space. Now, in Pakistan, it's all right for us to, stand very close to one another, and it's all right when, that's how we do it here. But in UK, people may not appreciate it, whereas in US, it might just be all right for you, not to maintain intimate space. So once you observe the people in your surrounding, you would know the kind of personal space that they, usually keep amongst themselves, and carry yourselves similarly. Do not, get involved into any political, religious, or controversial conversations with strangers. Do not, just talk about very safe topics like weather, sports, your country, your cultural food, etc. But just be wary of what you speak, who do you speak to, and how you speak. There are countries where if you maintain eye contact for too long, you might just come across as someone who is very intimidating. But say, for example, in UK, it's very important that you have a smile on your face all the time, and you pass courtesies around, and say good morning even to strangers. But say, for example, in Germany, you do not just go around talking to strangers like that. You kind of maintain your space, and you let the other person maintain the space. Also, the third thing that I would like to talk about is that you need to find local connections before you go over there. When I say local connections, that means you need to look for friends, family who's already there. If you have your relatives, get in touch with them. If you have your friends or your seniors, do speak to your career advisor. It's very important that he or she knows which country you're going to, and then your career advisor can help you get in touch with people in that country or seniors in that country, for that matter. Local connections are important because you see, in case you land into an emergency or something happens, an incident happens, you should know, one person that you can get in touch with, because it's going to be a little difficult for you to get in touch with your family immediately back home because of internet issues, or you might not have the SIM or something. So it's important that you find local connections, get in touch with them while you're in Pakistan, tell them of your flight details, tell them when you're landing, tell them where you're staying, your hostel, your dorm, your university, everything properly, precisely. Then, before you leave the country, talk to the admissions officer of your university and talk about the financial aspects, talk about where you can find, how you can find a bank, and how you can open your account. There are times when the admission officers do help you set up a bank account in the foreign country. If that can happen before you land there, that's amazing, perfect. Otherwise, in the very first week of your landing, it's important that you find a bank and you must deposit some money in it. You will need money invariably, so it's very important that you're financially secure. Then the fifth most important thing is that once you go there, talk to the admission officer and give you the list of all the emergency contact numbers. In case of any accident, in case of any emergency, you should know the contact details of the local departments. Say, for example, the paramedics, the fire brigade. I can't think of any other emergency number at the top of my head. But every university issues you a list of emergency contact details. Other than that, once you go into the dorm, start making friends. If you're sharing a room with someone, start talking to your friend over there. Start talking to the others around, and they will tell you of a number of places that you should visit, you should not visit, because you see, the locals over there are very helpful. Your classmates, say, for example, start making friends with them. Start talking about different places. Where should you go? Where should you not go? Which places are safer? Which places are not safer as comparatively? Why? Because you might not just find these details on internet. You see, the internet shows that all the places are safe, of course, but then I know of some places in Turkey which are not safe for tourists because you get mugged there. But the locals do know which places are not safe to go. So it's important that you make friends and start talking to them casually, because you see, your classmates and your dorm mates are going to be your buddies for the next 3 years of your life. So it's important that you maintain those connections. Also, it's going to be very important in terms of when renting out or in terms of any emotional support that you need, then it's important that you find out about your Pakistan's embassy. And if you can find somebody's phone number or somebody's email within the embassy, it's going to be ideal. Why? Because you might just, God forbid, have some problem with your documentation or your passports or your tickets. Anything might just go wrong. You see, I'm giving you these tips as precautions because you need to be prepared if God forbid something goes wrong. So it's important that you find the embassy also and where it's located, and if you can get an email or a phone number or something there. Then before you go, pack smart. The students, I mean, you guys, I know you're very excited and you would like to pack a lot and shop from Pakistan, but I would not advise you to do that. I would advise you to pack smart. When I say that, I mean do not carry too many suits or boots because it's going to be very heavy. You wouldn't want to carry around so much load, especially when you're searching flights. There's a chance of your luggage getting lost. B, it's always advisable that you go over there and according to the local fashions and the local do's and don'ts of the clothing, you can buy your clothes from there. Then it's very important for you to stay in touch with your friends and family. I cannot emphasize on this enough. It's very important that you give them a call at least once every day. Tell your family where you are. Talk to your mother. Tell her that you're all right, fine. Because I received this complaint a number of times with students when they go there, they just forget their family and parents, and they don't call as often. You need to realize that your parents are very worried for you because obviously you're in a foreign land now. So it's important that you at least give them a call for 2 months regularly, once every day. I would recommend 2 months because after that, you also get used to the country. They also get used to you not being around. So stay in touch with them. Last but not the least, you see, guys, I can give you a gazillion tips and tricks. I can, go on talking about these things the whole night also. But anything can go wrong and everything can go right. So basically, there are no do's and don'ts and tips and tricks. I mean, these are some things that I'm just, telling you off my head. But just be prepared for whatever comes your way. Be prepared. You see, we are giving you an education. Your parents have actually invested in your education to be confident. Carry yourself well, stay calm and composed. There is no situation in this whole wide world that you cannot get out of. And I will repeat myself, there is no situation in this world that you cannot get out of. You just need to stay calm, relaxed. There's always going to be help around. If nothing works, your admission office is always there. Your counselors are there on universities. Your emotional counselors are there. Go talk to them. If you're feeling overwhelmed, which I know you will in the first 2 3 months, it's perfectly fine. Like Vishal also said, you will get overwhelmed, and it's okay to go and talk to somebody about it. If you are not comfortable talking to your counselor, talk to your classmates, talk to your dorm mates. I am pretty sure that they would be in the same boat as well. You can start talking to Indians or Koreans or Malaysians for that matter, because we're all from Asia and we kind of share the similar backgrounds and cultures, especially Indians. So talk to them. Hindi, Urdu are pretty much similar, so language and India barrier as well with them. Went out, do not feel overwhelmed, and just stay calm, relaxed. With this, I'm going to hand over the floor to Sheroz once again to take you further. We've got a couple of videos for you lined up, so Sheroz, over to you.
Thank you very much, Mashal and Mariam. Your parts were really enlightening, and I'd just like to move it forward a little bit. So we can give you all the tips and tricks and all the information that you need, but obviously at the end of the day, what we're trying to teach you about here is experience. So it would help if you hear from people who have gone through some of the things that you might be going through over the next few months. So we will look at 2 videos. One is of a person who moved moved from Pakistan to a different country for university, and one is of a person who moved from a small town far off in Pakistan to a big city, so that we know how to behave with both kinds of people, for example, right? So we'll just move along. And the first video that we're going to show you is, for example, an experience of when you would be going into another cultural space. So when you would be going abroad for your education.
I'm Hamza Umar, and I'm an Ivy DP alumni from Beaconhouse PECHS campus, now doing my bachelor's in economics from Sabancı University in Istanbul, Turkey. Turkey is an amazing country. The landscape, art, culture, and history, all embedded in the idea of modernism, where people are modern from their mindsets, accepting each individual for the person he or she is, and being accommodating to all ethnicities, cultures, and diversities. It really meant a lot for me to go and experience these things and bring back a new version of me. Every year I visited my home, and I believe there are so many things to still touch upon and experience, and I want to ponder these memories throughout my life. Some general issues I feel students face abroad are language issues, cultural issues, or some other adjustment issues. Learning the language of the country you have moved to, for be it German, Dutch, or Turkish, can really open an area of opportunities that you cannot avail otherwise. This can be a bit tricky for students coming from countries like Pakistan, where provincial languages are really the first languages or the mother tongues of the students, and English for that matter is not even their second or the third language. And then you go abroad to a non-English speaking country, so it can really delay the adjustments. However, as a plus point, the people there are really accommodating, and they help you learn the language and adjust. And even though the universities, they teach in English there, but they arrange special language classes which can help you learn the language and adjust quickly. The world outside is different, and once you step into it, you get to grow as an independent individual. You meet and get to know people from different cultures and diversities, from which you make friends. And I believe the most positive point above all is that you explore the world that has been hidden inside of you all this time.
Okay, so as we all heard, Omar, he captured the experience of moving abroad to a cultural space very well. Now, the key things to remember in what Omar said is the people that he met in that other cultural space, in that foreign cultural space, were very welcoming, right? They helped him learn the language. They helped him, showed him around. Basically, a lot of the stuff that Mashal and Mariam mentioned before this, that you speak to individuals who live in those cultures, and they can show you the ropes around the places, or teach you a little bit of the language and everything. All of that is very important. But what we do need to keep in mind is that for a lot of us who might be going to local universities in big cities like Karachi, Lahore, Islamabad, and stuff like that, we might be welcoming students from far off areas, from small towns or villages, who might have worked super hard to get there. And for them to come into a cultural space that we're more comfortable with, that gives us the responsibility to help them out when they come into our cultural space, for example. And the next video that we're going to show you is about a person who experienced something very similar. So he was a former student of mine, and he was glad to record this video for all of you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Yasin Salim, and I belong to a small city of Sindh named Shahidapur district, Sangar. I did my intermediate pre-engineering from Shahidapur. और प्री इंजीनियरिंग की, लेकिन जो कभी इंटरमीडिएट तो प्री इंजीनियरिंग में गया, लेकिन वो कभी करना नहीं था. लेकिन किया क्यों? क्योंकि कभी कोई अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं थी प्री मेडिकल और प्री इंजीनियरिंग के अलावा. ہمیشہ سے سوشل سائنسز کرنے کا شوق تھا, ریڈنگ رائٹنگ کا شوق تھا. تو پھر آئی بی اے کراچی میں ٹیسٹ دیا سوشل سائنسز اور لبرل آرٹس میں, لیکن فرسٹ اٹیمپٹ میں میتھس تو اچھی تھی کیونکہ پری انجینئرنگ کا اسٹوڈنٹ تھا, لیکن انگلش کا حال بہت برا تھا. مطلب فرسٹ اٹیمپٹ میں میرا مائنس. دین پھر نیکسٹ آفٹر 6 months میں نے اگین ٹرائی لیا, تو الحمد للہ آئی میڈ ان ٹو آئی بی اینڈ آئی گاٹ 104 اسکور ان انگلش. لیکن یہ ساری بات کرنے کا مسئلہ کیا ہے کہ اب میں محنت کر کے آئی بی اے پہنچ تو گیا, لیکن آئی بی اے میں سروائیول بہت مشکل تھا, کیونکہ صرف آئی بی اے میں مجھے ایک میرا صرف پڑھائی کے لحاظ سے کیپیبل ہونا ضروری نہیں تھا. آئی ہیو ٹو بی آئی شوڈ ہیو سم ایکسٹرا کریکولر ایکٹیویٹیز, دوستیاں کرنا, لیکن میں سب کمپیٹیبل نہیں تھا. کیوں؟ کیونکہ سندھ کے چھوٹے سے شہر سے اٹھ کر میں پاکستان کے سب سے بڑا شہر چلا گیا تھا. پھر ادھر کلاس میں بیٹھا ہوتا تھا, میں 3 سے 4 زبانیں بول لیتا ہوں, لائک راجستھانی اینڈ سندھی اینڈ اردو اینڈ دوسری زبان. تو پھر ہوا کیا کہ میرے ایکسنٹ کا مسئلہ تھا, میں کلاس میں پارٹیسپیٹ نہیں کر پاتا تھا. میرے برابر میں لوگ ہوتے تھے آف مکسڈ کالج اینڈ بیکن ہاؤس اور ایل جی ایس کے جی ایس, تو پھر ان کا ایکسنٹ دیکھ کے میں گھبرا جاتا تھا, پڑھائی میں پارٹیسپیٹ نہیں کر پاتا تھا. لیکن پھر جب یہ چیزیں تھی بہت ساری تھی, دوست نہیں بنتے تھے کیونکہ مجھے وہاں کے ماحول کا نہیں پتہ تھا, میں انیزی فیل کرتا تھا ان لوگوں میں. پھر اینزائٹی بھی ہوتی تھی, ڈپریشن بھی ہوتا تھا, اور اس کے پھر بھی لیکن بس لگے رہتے تھے نہیں یار یہاں پر آ گئے تو کچھ نہ کچھ کرنا ہے. لیکن پھر ایک چیز تھی کہ یار ایسے تو نہیں چلے گا, کچھ نہ کچھ کرنا پڑے گا. پھر الحمد للہ محنت کی, اپنے ایکسٹرا کریکولر پہ محنت کی, تھوڑا لوگوں کے ساتھ اٹھنا بیٹھنا شروع کیا, اور اس میں مطلب بالکل ایک چیز کو ضرور کریڈٹ دوں گا. میری جو گیدرنگ تھی نا, دے ور سو مچ سپورٹیو. وہ مجھے سکھاتے تھے, سمجھاتے تھے یار یہ ایسے ہوتا ہے یا ایسے ہوتا ہے, اور مطلب یہ سارا ڈفرینس مجھے, مطلب وہ سپورٹیو تھے, نہ کہ مجھے تنگ کرنا یا کچھ کہنا, وہ سپورٹ کرتے تھے مجھے. تو مطلب یہ ساری چیزیں تھیں. پھر الحمد للہ ایک یہ ریڈنگ رائٹنگ اسکل ڈیولپ کر لی, تو اس سے پتہ چلنے لگا کہ کیسے بہتر ہوتے ہیں معاملات, اور پھر دوستوں نے سپورٹ کیا. آج اللہ کا شکر ہے میں نہ ہی میرے اسٹڈیز میں اچھا ہوں, بلکہ اس کے علاوہ میں اس ٹائم پہ ایٹ دس مومنٹ میں سمر 2020 میں 3 انٹرنشپس کر رہا ہوں. ایک جگہ میں روٹ ٹریک کلب آف کراچی مڈ سٹی کا پروجیکٹ مینیجر ہوں, دوسری جگہ میں اعتبار میں آپریشن انٹرن کر رہا ہوں, اور تیسری جگہ دی برج اسکول میں ٹیچنگ انٹرن ہوں. سو اٹس آل اباؤٹ کہ اگر میں یہ کہتا ہوں کہ اگر آپ محنت کریں اور آپ کا پورا آپ کی گیدرنگ سپورٹیو ہو. اور یہ بھی ہوتا تھا کہ میرے جو ٹیچرز وغیرہ تھے, پھر جو ٹیچرز وغیرہ تھے ان سے میں ڈسکس کرتا تھا, دے ور ایسے الحمد للہ ایک جو بڑا چینج آیا, اور پھر میں کراچی میں سروائیو کر پایا. الحمد للہ آج میرے پاس ایک اچھا ایکسٹرا کریکولر ایکٹیویٹیز بھی ہیں, میرے پاس اچھی انٹرنشپس بھی ہیں میری سی وی میں, میرے پاس اچھے دوست بھی ہیں, اور اللہ کا شکر دیٹ دی موسٹ تھنگ that I survived in IBA. That's the biggest thing I have achieved. So it's all about your hard work and the best gathering you get and your supportive teacher. تو ہو ہی جاتا ہے. So that's all from on my side. Thank you very much.
Okay, so basically, Asan recapped the same thing: the importance of support, of being supportive, enables them to succeed in a space that we're more comfortable with. Again, let me bring you back to the point of privilege. Some people get opportunities a little easier than most people. For example, Ehsan mentioned that he had to try for IBA twice. Some of us get in one shot, and even if English is not something that we'd consider ourselves having problems with, where we've been doing this whole session in English, and I'm pretty sure everyone's getting it. There comes a person who might have had a difficult time if he was attending this session. So the reason why he was able to survive was because the people he found were supportive in terms of helping him out, showing him the ropes, and just giving him the support that he needed to survive in a space that he wasn't entirely comfortable in. When we welcome other people into our social spaces, this is the kind of behavior that we need to have, because it's important. And why is it important? Again, let me take you back to the right at the beginning, when I said that it's cultural competency as a skill is valued in professional settings. Now, 2 years ago in the US, a black man was refused service at a Starbucks outlet. And what ended up happening over the next week was that thousands of Starbucks outlets throughout the US just got closed, and all the employees got pulled into racial sensitivity training. Basically, our version of a multicultural awareness session to know how to behave with people who are from different races or different backgrounds in terms of their class or ethnicity or gender. So now in today's world, these skills are important. You need to be able to learn, whether you're a vendor in a bazaar or the CEO of a company or a student at university. You need to be able to know how to behave with people from different cultures, so that you can make connections and succeed in your professional and personal life better than the next person. So just to give you a recap, cultural competence is a valuable tool for professional and personal success nowadays. And the way you get to cultural competence as a skill is to be aware of other people's cultures and the differences that you might hold with them, and to embrace those differences with sensitivity and empathy. That's how you develop cultural sensitivity. This whole session has been a briefer into helping you develop cultural competency as a skill. And there might be times, for example, when you are the one facing a cultural insensitivity from others. And in those cases, how do you cope? Mashal went through those steps with you earlier in the presentation. And what helps in fitting in different cultural spaces is just doing your research, honestly, just knowing the do's and don'ts, knowing a little bit of the language so that you can cooperate with people, and just observing and communicating is what helps you get through most of your life in a multicultural setting. With that, we would like to close our presentation. And with this quote by Audre Lorde, one of my favorite writers. Anyone who wants to read about how to embrace difference, how to approach the issues of difference, Audre Lorde is the person to go to. Now, and she says, it is not our differences that divide us, it is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And with that, the presentation comes to a close.
And Sharoz, if I could just add one more point here, very, very well ended. And, this quote is also a little bit of a summary of what we've been trying to say. And I would just like to, thank the students that shared their experiences. And what I honestly really liked was that they pretty much summed up what we were trying to say, but they highlighted also one more very important point, was the friends aspect that one of the students mentioned is his gathering, which was really important. So it's really important, guys, that we have people around us who encourage us, who support us, not people who bring us down, because our gathering says a lot about us. So please, if we could just be a little careful, and just, wherever you guys are going, all the best, and just be yourself. With just a few of these skills and traits, you guys will learn, you guys will experience. But just to give you a little bit of a, just prepare you a little bit before you go into a setting. So thank you and all the best.
Thank you, everyone. And
bye-bye. Thank you for watching. Allah Hafiz.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, great.
Oh.
Should we stop the recording as well?
Yes, I'm going to stop the recording.